a massive, massive thank you to all of our amazing channel members whose ongoing support help make these videos possible. Thank you guys so much. It really does mean a lot. Hello, my fellow kin. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to the first tactical report of 11th edition for the Leagues of Votann. Now, obviously, I do not have points. I am not that special to GW. And this video was also filmed before the Thursday article came out for AdMech, which is what I played against in today's video. So we had to kind of just assume like what a disposition he would be able to choose from. So he took like Halo's Creed, which we'll talk about in a bit, for his detachment, which we both felt would be a 3-point DP. Turns out it was, so we were right about that. And we gave him Take and Hold, but it actually ended up being Purge, which does make sense. But just for the purposes of the video before we had the information, we gave him Take and Hold. So that obviously alters the matchup a little bit, but we still played a game with those rules and those primaries. So I'm excited to take you guys through that. I got a little bit of an idea. This is my first game playing 11th hands-on, so it gave me a really good feel for how the missions play, what felt really good, what the meta looks like. Well, what the meta looks like, what I felt could be a problem and could be good going forward, I should say, in the emerging meta. And just like how these dispositions kind of came together and what that whole experience was like. So it'll be a little bit different for a tactical report. Like I'm going to go through the game and I'll share some thoughts like as we go through it about 11th. It might be a little bit longer. Then I'll probably just do like a really informal video, maybe just for like the members to share like some other thoughts that I had, more like personal blog style, like I always do. So with that said, let's jump on in. So I wanted to try Recon out, the Reconnaissance primary disposition. And the reason for that is because it looked really cool and it looked different from what Votann, from what the game was previously in 10th edition. So I wanted to change that up and try this Reconnaissance out. So it was a lot of fun, and I took a list that was quite similar to my Persecution Prospect list that I ran in another tactical report earlier on in the Codex life cycle of 10th edition. Because I ran that list just to have like a lot of junk, a lot of trash, and this primary mission is really about like board presence in different areas, especially for this matchup versus Take and Hold. So the primary for me is I would get points for being in 3 table quarters, or I would get additional points for being in 4 table quarters. I think it was like 6 points for doing that. I would also get points, I think it was 4 points for holding my expansion. And then I would also get 1 additional point every time I would kill an enemy unit. So destroy an enemy unit, I would get a point. So it's really about just like playing the flanks of the table, locking down your expansion, which Votann is pretty good at doing. And then playing those flanks, picking up like cheap units. You don't have to have like crazy fights or go for like huge pieces that your opponent has or overextend. It's really just about picking up their cheap stuff. And my Persecution Prospect list did a pretty good job of that. So I tweaked it a little slightly here just to test some other stuff out. But what I ended up going with were the 3 1-point detachments. I wanted to see what it was like to run 3 1-point detachments together and just try all these different utility buffs out. It looks like they're designed to kind of like plug into 2-point ones and just give you like a little bit more flexibility or a little bit more of a benefit that you might be lacking. So like you're just drawing upon the strength of something else to just sub that into your main core system of stratagems, which we'll talk about a bit later. So I took all 3 1-point DPs and I was running Bury, and I decided to take the Reconnaissance for my disposition. So I took Bury. I took 2x10 warriors with the double high las guns. I took 2x10 Jaegers with the shotguns and the special weapons. I took a set of 2 Earth Shakers. It just kind of made sense. Like Battle Shock seems to be more important on paper, and the nature of Reconnaissance and the primary that you score is about picking up pieces around the table. So I figured if I could leverage getting my Hernkin units to push up first, which is what they're here to do, get me primary points, at the same time see things and strip the cover off of them, well, now suddenly my Earth Shakers are not hitting on 6s anymore. They could potentially be hitting on 4s. And the AP1 is actually going to be significantly more impactful on them as well. So there were a lot of nice little combos with that I wanted to explore, and I thought it fit this play style naturally. So I put one in. I then had 3 Thunderkin squads, so 2x3 with Gravs, and then a 6-man with Gravs as well. My list is severely lacking in anti-tank, which is what I also felt the Persecution Prospect list had a problem with. But I just wanted to run that as like kind of like a stock and see if it was enough anti-tank, because I know people are saying like it's an addition of MSU units. So because of how killy the meta is going to be. So I just wanted to see if that was true, what that kind of felt like on the table. I then had 3 squads of 5 Hearthguards to benefit from the Hearthband Light detachment that I pulled in. So there's going to be some strat support here to like use them as like an incision piece to kind of just pick up these other MSU pieces. And I thought that they supported what the Reconnaissance primary mission wanted to do with this position quite well. So I put those in. And then I had, of course, 3x3 Pioneers. They're fast. They provide a lot of utility in these detachments here. And they just seem to always play flanks naturally because you want to uppy-downy them. So it just made a lot of sense to include them, especially with the ability to strip cover now with the strat support. It felt like a solid piece to have. I then had a bunch of transports. So I took 2 carriers here to split my Jaegers up. You need a lot of trash for this mission because every turn you need to be sending out pieces to the 4 corners of the table, the 4 quadrants. So you need a plan to do that repeatedly for 5 turns. So I had this to split the Jaegers, make them really cheap and small. And then I had 3 Sagittars that I brought in because I'm not sure yet if dedicated transports are going to be affected by the rule of 3. It was a little bit ambiguous. There was a early Warcom article that showed only Battle Line as being able to take 6. I haven't seen any information on this yet. So I ended up going with just 3 of them to be safe. And then I took all matter cannons because the matter cannon is actually quite interesting now, being 6 shot, strength 7, AP 1, damage 2. And you get like the AP is more impactful. You have methods of stripping cover. Your army rule gives you +1 to hit sometimes. And they're fast. They have assault, so you could advance them up and still shoot that gun. So it's actually a pretty nice profile for getting things up the board and just like clearing an objective with that piece and whatever's inside, which we'll kind of see later in the video as well. And of course here I had the scouting detachment for them where you could even rapid ingress Sagittars if you wanted to additionally. So this list is 1970. I didn't take any enhancements because I don't know what they're going to cost. And I also left a 30-point buffer in case there are changes to points. I just want to keep it as like reasonably fair as I can versus my opponent. So this is what I settled on and we agreed to run. So like I mentioned for the disposition, it was going to be reconnaissance versus take and hold. For my side, I basically just had to get units in quadrants. So I would have to be on this side of the table, this side of the table, this side of the table, and then this side of the table, which was like right behind this this piece of terrain over here. And they had to be 6 inches away from the center. So it looked like something like this, basically. Like as long as you were able to get around this piece, so like anywhere here, well, not this part here, well, technically from my side, but you know, you have Earthshaker sitting in the back, but anything here would net you the points, and then you had to lock down an objective outside of your DZ. So for me, it would be my natural, which would be up here. My opponent was playing to take and hold, so his was purge and secure, I think what it was. And I really liked the like gameplay loop, I should say, of this disposition, because essentially all you need to do is like hold objectives to get points, but then every time you take an objective that you did not previously have that turn, you get more points. So essentially it's just like you get on an objective, and if I go to take you off of it to deny you points, you take it back, and then you score more points. And if I give it to you, you get 4 points, or I think it was like 3 or 4 points. So it's an interesting dynamic where if you leave your opponent's objectives, they're going to ramp up on points. And then if you go to take it off of them, they could get more points because of that. Because they also have another way to score primary, which is every time they kill a unit that is either within an objective or they have a unit in an objective that kills you. regardless of where you are. So it actually is a little bit frustrating because it feels like, a lot of the secondaries are like directing you to objective markers. So you're almost like forced to give them points for you to get points as well, rather than trying to deny. It actually kind of felt like we were racing to cap our primary instead. So that might just be like because it was our first time playing these missions, so like we didn't math out what the actual like gameplay loop looked like in terms of like the play patterns and things like that for points. And then the last thing I'll mention here is for the format I have here. Obviously the Goonhammer app, the tabletop battles wasn't updated, so I just used this cool website that had like a tracker for all the secondary cards and the dispositions and stuff like that. So we tracked the points on that, which unfortunately doesn't have like a clean UI screen at the end that recaps the scores. But I did take notes, obviously, and I'll let you guys know as we get to the end of the video. Keep it a surprise. So kicking things off over on my side of the table, I had one Sagittar here holding warriors, of course. I had more warriors here. I had bikes here, 3 Thunderkin here, carrier, Sagittar with warriors, bikes, and then double Earthshaker. And I had some Jaegers infiltrating here and some Jaegers infiltrating over here. I then also had, in reserves, I had my 3 sets of Hearthguard. I had 3 more Thunderkin and a 6-man Thunderkin. And then I decided to put one of my Sagittars that had Buri and 5 warriors inside of it as another rapid ingress, because I figured, I'm paying the 1 DP for this detachment, I might as well try it out. And what I immediately noticed on the table during deployment was that there aren't that many places to reasonably scout to and be safe. Because of the way that the new mechanic works for getting line of sight, like visibility, you just have to touch the footprint and you're able to see and shoot, which means you can't really safely stage any more behind terrain pieces because your opponent just has to touch them and then they could shoot you, which actually kind of makes it a little bit difficult, to be honest. And then the other thing is that in this primary mission, your opponent's rewarded for killing you while they're on an objective or if you're in one. So you're actually not really incentivized to play for the center whatsoever. However, in a similar vein, you also just can't let them take and dominate the middle, because this provides a staging opportunity for them to then push out and hit your objectives. So it was a little bit strange to play this one, and I thought it made for an interesting dynamic, almost like cat and mouse between the two of us, which I guess we'll see as the game progresses. My opponent's side, he has some infiltrators, a Dooncrawler, a single one over here. He has some battle line. I believe they're breachers over here. Transport with more battle line. He's trying out double Castellans today. And then he had a bunch of the las cannon chickens. And then in reserves, I think he had the lance chicken. So he had a chicken with lance in reserves, just to have some kind of rapid ingress threat to apply pressure somewhere else. So we do the roll off here, and I'm going second. So this is what the board looks like post scout. So like I mentioned, not too many places to scout into, but I did end up positioning myself in such a way where I could hide everything if I was going second. I think here the enhancement to be able to bring Sagittars through walls would actually be pretty clutch, because otherwise, I lose like 3 inches of movement coming this way, whereas I would just be able to drive straight up through the wall. And I think, like, tempo-wise, my initial impressions with this disposition is that, naturally you want to always be able to have something that projects to the other side of the table. And we were doing like some calculations on the math, and it seemed like for me to reasonably keep up with him scoring minimum 8 points a turn, essentially, and if I tried to stop that, he gets like upwards of 11 points a turn, potentially. I needed to consistently try to get 4 quadrants taken every turn to keep up with that and cap my primary. So not impossible to do, but I did think it was a little strange in terms of like how to set that up, because Votann are typically pretty slow moving, and I would have thought on paper there would have been a better way to like stage up here, right? I feel like classic 10th would have had a ruin this way. So it was strange to play around that with so many like open terrain features, where it's a lot harder for you to stage vehicles and get things out. It seems like you really want a lot of speed to get there. or the ability to go through walls, like I mentioned. So I scout everything back pretty safely here. And then in the middle, I decide to bring up my carrier because there isn't that much that can reasonably threaten it turn one. And I have my Jaegers, of course, that are over here ready to reactive move and do something in case I have like an action in the middle of the table that I need to take care of. And then everything here kind of shuffles back because I know he has these infiltrators that move upwards of 10 inches off the bat with their +2 movement from Halo's Creed. They have access to advance and charge. So it makes it a little bit difficult in terms of like screening such a big threat range out. But I just didn't want him to touch the bikes. Like anything else would have been fine for me, just not the bikes. So my opponent does some staging. He brings his things up. He immediately recognizes that my anti-tank is lacking entirely. So he could totally disrespect me by rushing his hauls up beforehand. Like, so the first wave are all hauls for him because now he dominates board space and I don't really have a good way to safely interact with these and meaningfully interact with them, I should say. And then here he sticks out 2 of the breachers to just get line of sight and take some shots onto this Jaeger squad over here in the corner, which he was able to draw a line of sight on. So going into his end of turn, this is what it looks like. So he's able to kill the Jaeger squad here. He does some pretty aggressive plays for it because he did draw no prisoners turn 1. And he just wanted to make use of the fact that I do not have too many anti-tank pieces or long enough range to interact with these breachers that are positioned up here in this nook. So he ends up killing the squad of Jaegers with 2 of the breachers, and then the 5 Sicilians end up charging in and killing the carrier. So he kills the carrier, consolidates into my Jaegers. My Jaegers fight back to kill one of the Sicarians or the infiltrators. And he ends up scoring points for secure and no prisoners here. So we go into my turn, and this is what things look like at the end of the movement phase. So like I mentioned, I'm just trying to apply tempo and pressure to the flanks of the table to be able to score my points. So I get these Jaegers that were staged here and bring them up this way for my primary. And then over here, I end up advancing this carrier all the way up this way so that I get my points being outside of 6 of the middle and then also being on this quadrant of the table. And my logic here was I wanted to be able to see these this battle line squad so that my indirect could shoot into it. So basically grant the visibility so I'm not hitting on 6s. I would have +1 to hit for heavy and then also like my army rule. So I actually become pretty consistent and reliable in a lot of ways in picking up this squad, and it's a lot of shots that are going to be wounding on 2s. I have blast, I have AP1, so he's saving on 5s. So there actually is quite a bit of damage that could come out of this. I end up taking this squad down to about half and force the battle shock, so at -1, which felt pretty good. So they end up getting battle shocked here, and you'll see like it takes a while before they're actually able to interact with the mission in the game. So that felt like it was relevant for a bit. One of the misplays I did here was I didn't realize that he had the ability to move a vehicle, disembark, and still charge, which is massive, obviously. So what I should have done instead was brought the carrier up like this, something like that over here, and then just charged it because it's probably going to be about a 4-inch charge. I'm in hostile acquisition. I could re-roll that. And then just charge it to cross this threshold line and then also tag the vehicle at the same time so that he is unable to actually do the move, disembark, and charge strat. And then the last thing here, of course, is I just pick up these Sicarians that were in the middle. They did a reactive move, but I was able to use the 1 CP strat to strip cover. And then the bikes were able, and the Sagittar here were able to pick them up. I think like this way, there was something over here, and kill this squad. The other thing that happens here is that he overwatches the Jaeger squad to try to stop me from scoring points. So he does overwatch and he kills 3 out of 5. So I'm still there and I still score my points at the end of the turn. Going into round 2, so he goes for a pretty big push here. Extremely aggressive. So like I said, this was a misplay on my part. I should have just tagged the vehicle. I forgot that he has disembark and charge. So he brings this vehicle up and the infiltrators get out of the vehicle and they're ready to charge and just try to get into my backfield and take my home off of me. so he gets more points. I end up rapid ingressing my Sagi here that has Buri and the warriors inside, and unfortunately I didn't have enough CP to rapid ingress something else. It'll be a common theme this game where I felt like I was really tight on CP despite only really using like one strat a turn. I think Uthar is probably pretty important in terms of like, strat economy, being able to have those CP. It felt like it was something I would have needed, especially if like I had Uthar in this vicinity, somewhere here or here or here, like being hidden, and he was able to provide me with the free strats so that I would be able to strip cover for free and then interact with this piece, have the extra CP to double rapid ingress. That would have been more meaningful, I think. So just something that I realized while I was playing is it would have probably been nice to have the extra CP economy through that. So I end up bringing this here to kind of like put more pressure on this side of the table because he's applying a lot on my side extremely aggressively. And I'm hoping that I could help alleviate some of that pressure. So he ends up bringing these to stage, these chickens over here with the last cannons, and then I simply reactive move and try to hide a little bit from as many of these breachers as I can, and I managed to hide from all but one, so he only is able to shoot me with one of these. So I did miss the picture for the end of his turn here, but this is the end of my movement phase. So what essentially happened on his turn was he killed the carrier that was over here, obviously, and then he ends up pushing his tank up, gets the Sicarians out, they charge onto the Earthshakers and kill one of them, and then he ties up my transport so I can't fall back and disembark. So he's trying to deny me my primary points by playing for those side objectives, or the side flanks, I should say. So we go into my turn. I take center ground and engage on all fronts. So center ground is the new area denial, essentially. I was debating if I should bring this guy up, but with the amount of openings on these terrain features and just how accessible it is, I was in Overwatch range of basically everything in his army, no matter where I went. So what I decided to do instead was just get these warriors out by advancing them. I then cycled in some more warriors into this vehicle so that it would be ready to push up this way. I drove the Sagittar up over here, who's on, I think, 2 wounds at this point, 1 or 2 wounds after getting shot by some of the breachers. Everything here gets out to try to charge this tank, and I have some grabs that come down from reserves to try to strip cover and do some additional damage. So my idea here this game is I want to totally dominate and hold this the whole game because it's giving me 4 points a turn, and if he ever has the opportunity to take it off of me, it's going to be like an 8-point swing. So I need to make sure I stop him from getting this. So I'm just overloading this side of the table, and I'm hoping that I'm able to kind of like slow down the tempo here that he's applying and stalling this out. And then, in 10th edition, we'd be scrapping over to center. I don't want to be in the center, but all my secondaries are forcing me to go there. So maybe there's a play where there's like a world where you hold your cards because you could hold them now. So maybe I don't go for the area denial play. I just hold them back. And then later in the game, when he has fewer resources left, then I push out. So I think that change makes the game a lot more tactical in terms of score projection, because now there's another element you need to account for, which is by you going for a secondary card right now in this moment, what is the opportunity cost that you're giving your opponent? And that's something that I think is going to take a lot of time to get down, is that that accountability, right? Like just ensuring that you are not giving away more points than you are earning, and if it's worth holding off on that for an opportunity later in the game. So I thought that was a really interesting twist and a little dynamic to how secondary cards actually functioned. The last thing he does here in the movement phase is he rapid ingresses his invisible chicken with the lance, so the melee ballistari, which will swap the base out in a second when one of his other ones die. And then this is the end of my turn. So what happens here is I end up trying to take advantage of the emergency disembarkation rule in the game, where if you really wrap a vehicle well, you could have a massive impact in terms of killing it and that unit that's inside being unable to actually get out anywhere and dying. So what I end up doing here is I do a massive charge. So I get this Sagittar, who's now dead. I get him around this way to block off any disembarks on this side. The warriors block off any disembarks on this side. and then Buri also charges in and kills the vehicle. So essentially, we get the vehicle down. He has to emergency disembark, and he's unable to fit about half of his units that are inside of it. So half of them die outright. He then rolls his hazardous rolls, and he loses like 3 or 4 more. And then after, his vehicle explodes. So his vehicle explodes, it takes down my Sagittar, but it also kills the last of his battle line that are inside. So that felt like really impactful. And I really like that a lot because your plays are rewarded. Basically, you could punish somebody if you're able to fully wrap their vehicle and you kill it. So he has 1 character left that's just standing over here. And then on this bottom side, I'm unable to kill this tank, but I do end up getting rid of these infiltrators that ended up being on my home and just re-securing this objective. So I stayed tied up with this vehicle because I don't want it to keep doing shenanigans to me and being annoying. He has a strat for fallback, shoot, and charge, but that's going to cost him a CP, and I'm okay with that. So again, I'm just maintaining my steady flow of points here at the end of the turn of getting my 6 VP for being in the edges, in the table quarters, and then slowly accumulating killing points by picking up his little scrap pieces and whenever I'm forcing fights. So it's his turn 3 now. He ends up getting Beacon and Assassination. So Beacon is you just pick a unit and it has to survive in no man's land. So he picks his lone op and obviously the lone op survives. So it's free points. And then he also gets Assassination the turn that Buri comes out, classic. So Buri is up for grabs here. He does a nice push here to kill Buri for his movement phase. And I end up rapid ingressing more Hearthguard. My first wave of Hearthguard, I should say, over here on this objective. There weren't any other spots for me to really go, simply because of how much space his units were taking up. Like, they're huge bases. They're pretty good at screening, right? Like, all this is screened out. All this is 6-inch screened out because he has a guy here that has a 12-inch bubble of no deep strike. So I literally cannot land, like, anywhere on this side of the table at all for just like a couple of units that are alive here. So I end up going for the middle. I figure this is going to be a go turn for me next turn when he ends up pushing everything else. If I could now, I've picked up enough of his scrap pieces here. Like, these are all staying back to screen, which means he has to play the game with his hulls. So if he does bring all of his hulls in the middle, his damage dealers, I could take care of all of these and then essentially be in a position where he won't have enough OC or enough anti-infantry damage to take me off of the points anymore, so he'll be unable to claim his points. So I'm trying to like just deny while I'm racking up points on the sides of the table. So he ends up doing a shooting phase, he kills Buri, and of course my Buri does not get up again. It is 6 games I play with Buri total, and he's gotten up once. I think he hates me. As I hate him. So we go into my turn here. So this is the end of my turn, what the game looks like. So there's quite a bit that happens here that I kind of missed in the picture, but I end up having my big goal turn, right? So I need to kill everything that's in the middle here, ideally, have a presence on it, shut down this side of the table completely, and then lock this down. It's turn 3. If I lock this down, I never have to worry about it again, and I just rack up all my points and get a nice lead. So I bring everything down from Deep Strike and reserves. I bring my Hearthguard here. I bring my Hearthguard here to deal with whatever's in front of them and hopefully charge onto this objective. These guys move up over here. And then I also get my 6-man Thunderkin squad to come down here and kill the robots, ideally. So just kind of establishing presence here, and the Hearthguard would then try to get a charge into these things and tie them up and try to shut them down. And then over on this side of the table, I keep trying to lock this tank down so that it can't do any actions or get behind enemy lines if it's battle shocked, because it is presently at low wound count. If it falls back while it's battle shocked, does take a desperate escape if it crosses through me. So I'm just trying to be as annoying as possible here and stalling it out, while on this side, I'm slowly establishing presence and pushing towards his home and hopefully diverting him away from the middle. I end up getting overwatched by 2 breachers, and the 2 breachers kill all 6 of my Thunderkin, which is crazy. So 2 breachers kill all 6 of my Thunderkin in Overwatch between 8 shots that are hitting on 5s in Overwatch and lethal hits on 6s, because AP is like super valuable now because of how cover works. So anything that goes through, I found playing this game that it felt extremely lethal. Anything that went through effectively killed whatever it shot if it had anything above AP 1 or 2. So just annihilated my 6-man squad here. Spiked a little bit, of course, on the Overwatch, but like I said, it was really like having that AP and not being able to stop it just went right through me. So I lost literally 6 Thunderkin to an Overwatch on 2 Breachers, which was insane, which kind of altered my plans because now I didn't have enough killing power to take the middle. But I put everything else that I had into these robots in front of me here, and I ended up charging and killing everything but one guy, taking him down to 6 wounds. So pretty brutal turn for me. I was unable to do that much damage, but in return, I do end up picking up all of the remaining breachers on this side of the table, and the only thing he has left is a single character model here. And once again, I'm locking down my points, just keeping these warriors alive, and it's giving me 6 points every time that they're here. So really valuable unit to have, just being able to throw cheap things out consistently and just throwing trash after trash after trash. And if your opponent doesn't dedicate stuff to kill the trash, you're racking up points on the sides. We go into round 4 for my opponent. He gets engage and outflank, so he ends up falling back further with his tank over here just to try to stop me from any plays to get onto his objective. And he brings call down this way to deal with the bike. So he charges in, and I think he manages to kill this bike afterwards. And then in the middle, he cleans everything else up and takes care of these Hearthguard over here as well. So I've lost the center, which is unfortunate. It doesn't matter for points for me because I don't get anything for holding the middle. I literally just have to hold the sides. But him being able to kill stuff every turn from the center objective is giving him quite a bit of points. So we go into round 4 for my turn. This is kind of what board state looks like. So this one bike survives call, and I end up pushing up this way. I end up getting no prisoners and behind enemy lines, so I just ditch behind enemy lines for a CP. It's not happening. I'm too slow to reach it, and he's still managing to screen me out with the 12 inches on this guy over here. So I can't land anywhere with my bikes. But the positive is, like I said, I've locked down this expansion for the whole game, so I've been racking up points. I think it's 4 points a turn for holding this, which is pretty sweet. We go into round 5. Call ends up pushing for my home, so this nets him a nice point swing. I think it's 4 points plus 3, so 7 points he gets for bringing Call here. I just couldn't stop it. I didn't have the anti-tank in my list to deal with tanks. And there were quite a few vehicles and monsters in this list that just disrespected me, which is unfortunate. But I don't lose anything for this happening, which I thought was really interesting. Like, in 10th, traditionally, you would lose quite a few points and be severely punished if you lost your home. In this case, it didn't do anything for me. I just gave him more points. I didn't lose any points. So as long as I was able to make those points up and keep pace with him, then I would also cap on primary. Which again makes for a really interesting dynamic in terms of what both players are trying to do. It's like you're playing your own separate game. So he pulls a cleanse here and area deny, so center ground. So he has the Dune Crawler chilling here, and then these guys are cleansing, and these guys are cleansing, and he locks down a solid 10 points for his secondaries this turn. So we go into my turn 5. And all I really need to do here is cap my cards for secondaries and ideally just kill something. And then I'll be able to get a full suite of points for the end of the game. So I uppy downy everything here because I pull a new card, which is forward position. So forward position is you have to take control of your opponent's expansion, which is actually kind of tough. So that made for a bit of a challenging card. But I did manage to do that. So I end up bringing all these bikes to this side of the table here. The Sagittar advances up and drops the Jaegers that were inside of it. The Warriors move up this way. I managed to kill the tank last turn. And then I end up just putting everything between all the bikes and the Sagittar and the Jaegers and the Warriors into these squads of Skitarii. We didn't roll the dice. We wanted to just wrap up. But pretty safe to say that I would be able to kill the 15 Skitarii that were on this objective and take it from him. If not wholly kill them, at least out OC enough to take it. And then, of course, end of game scoring, I'm able to get my full points for being in the 4 quadrants of the table, and also killing a couple of things this round, capping me on primary. So with the final round completed, it took the scores to 98 for the Leagues of Votann to 93 for the Adeptus Mechanicus, which I thought was really fascinating because this game was extremely lethal and there was so much fighting that was happening and destroying and killing of units that when I saw the scoreboard, it was quite strange to see because, you know, usually in 10th edition, how this game would have played is it would be a lot of back and forth trading. Like you're both trying to lock down your expansions, you keep the score going, and you're both fighting over the center. But there were so many different ways to accumulate primary points. You know, for myself, I just had to be somewhere on the table. So it didn't matter if I was losing objectives. Like if my opponent swung my home off of me, which would have been devastating in 10th, it had zero impact on my own scoring potential. So you really are kind of playing your own personal game. And I think for me to touch upon the pros of 11th that I found I really enjoyed, I think this is one aspect. It's the list building. It's building a point engine based on the very open information you have on how you score to win. It's building a list that does that well. And that felt really rewarding and fun to play because it's like you could actually just reverse engineer a list that plays really well to that specific mission. And it doesn't matter what your opponent is playing, you still have a way to play that game because they're doing something totally different. I thought it was interesting to take and hold. I think I preferred take and hold. Like if I was watching my opponent play that and I thought the play pattern looked a lot more interesting and fun, maybe not interesting, but a lot more fun and reliable than what I was doing. I struggled to find good staging positions because of how towing into terrain worked and the size of these footprints. It was like no matter what I would put here, I could be shot pretty easily if something just like stepped out a little bit. And I didn't necessarily have the anti-tank in this list to threaten back my opponent or any meaningful long-ranged shooting capabilities. Because again, you still have like these long firing lanes on this side of the table like this. And with the lack of safe staging positions for vehicles especially, I thought it was quite difficult. You're relying on speed to get where you need to be. So advancing and moving through walls with the Sagittar and then dumping something out 3 inches is one way of doing that. Like if you had like 5 Sagittars and it's like turn 1, this comes out, make a line, move block. Turn 2, this comes out, make a line, move block. And it's like, okay, now we're doing this, we're charging, we're getting in this corner. You always have presence here. And then same idea here. It's like trying to maybe, you know, if you get turn 1, you scout the bikes up and you just do a move block here to lock this down while you stage. So it guarantees you have like at least 3 more turns of scoring for being in this quadrant. So just for some closing thoughts on my first game of 11th, I found it a lot of fun. I think personally for me the best part, which is a little bit reflected in the outcome of the game in terms of points, 98 to 93, is the list building aspect. I haven't had this much fun with list building in quite some time because it really does feel like you're building a point engine rather than a list that just plays like regular old Warhammer. And some armies did it better. They had advantages that maybe you didn't have previously. And I found like now you could really curate your list depending on your detachment choice and disposition choice to play the game the way you want to play. Or at least, you know, for now it looks that way. I'm sure there's going to be a meta that comes out where it's like, oh, these things are just statistically worse than the other dispositions. But for now, it felt that way. It felt fresh and exciting. And we both had a lot of fun just like sitting down at the table and making lists that we wanted to try out for the video, for the game. So that part for me was really fun and exciting. I think the changes to Overwatch for me are ultimately a negative. I didn't like that because it felt like I lost a lot of agency over controlling my opponent's Overwatch potential. It's quite easy to draw a line of sight on the boards now. They're all very open. I felt they felt really open. And you're able to just toe on and see everything. So I don't like that you lost the ability to like sacrifice units to tie things up that were less valuable than your important pieces, because now like after you move and you fall back so you could shoot that target, it just shoots you first with Overwatch and potentially wipes the squad. Like as we saw with those breachers, 2 breachers overwatching, hitting on 5s and 6s with lethal hits. AP2, it just ripped apart the Thunderkin. Because you don't have a way to negate any defensive strats like on your end to negate their damage. So it felt quite strong. I think units that are good at Overwatch are going to really just have a good time. This edition is what it felt like. Trying to play around that was quite difficult on how open the boards were, because even like those footprints that have ruins, the ruins are all kind of like cut in half just on the corners. So if you touch something like an objective, you could still be seen quite easily from the other side of it, as long as something can see you when you're touching it, or they touch it and then they open up the entire board to Overwatch. So I don't like that you lost some agency in controlling your opponent's Overwatch potential, but I think that's probably one of the only drawbacks I immediately felt while playing. A lot of the other changes were quite good. I enjoyed how Battle Shock felt, because it did really feel more meaningful. And it did have an impact in terms of scoring potential for the game. There were a few moments where we were both, we had to take a moment to say, oh man, like, this actually stops me from trying to do what I was trying to accomplish. And we both felt that impact a lot more when we were playing. The changes for Hidden, or the introduction of Hidden, I didn't really feel like it came up all that much, because a lot of units still feel quite fast, and having assault and just being able to circumvent that distance, like whether they're really cheap and they just move up, they could see you, they shoot your really inexpensive unit like your 5 Jaegers that don't have any defensive skills. So as long as the damage goes through, any AP just kills them, because now they're going to save on 6s. So maybe that was just like this matchup in particular, where I was versus something that had basically assault army-wide. But those were kind of some of my initial thoughts to just right out the gate for my first game. Anyway, I had a lot of fun. I thought it was exciting. I'm looking forward to trying out different dispositions. I think Take and Hold is one that probably feels like a really solid play pattern to work towards, but there are a few other ones that catch my eye. And I definitely feel like tanks are going to be valuable or very durable units because of how lethal the game feels. Cover isn't that accessible anymore. It's actually a little tricky to get it to work the way you want it to, just because of how a single model not qualifying for cover can stop the squad from getting it entirely. And the AP being more impactful means that your units die a lot faster. So I definitely think that tanks are going to be present, and yes, MSU is going to be important as well, simply because of how lethal the game is going to be. So having well-rounded lists are probably going to be quite important. That's all I got for you guys today. If you enjoyed this one, let me know in the comments down below if I got any rules wrong. Maybe I did. Let me know about that as well. Let me know your thoughts if you've tried 11th out, and I'll be looking forward to making more of these in the future. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one.